You might be holding a 1941 wheat penny right now, and not even realize it's worth up to $99,500. But there's a tiny, almost invisible error that could be hiding in plain sight, and missing it could cost you a fortune. This isn't just another old copper coin. The 1941 wheat penny with no mint mark has secrets, errors, flaws, and historical quirks that are turning average collectors into accidental millionaires. But here's the problem: most people never bother to look close enough. And that one mistake could mean the difference between pocket change and life-changing cash. So here's what to do: grab your 1941 penny, turn on a strong light, and pay very close attention. Because in the next few minutes, you're going to learn exactly what to spot, and why this one coin has shaken the numismatic world. First, let's talk about double dies. One of the most famous errors in the 1941 wheat penny is a double date. If the 1 and 9 in the year look thick or slightly shadowed, almost like they were stamped twice, don't ignore it. That's a classic sign of a double die obverse, and collectors have paid over $8,900 for it at auction. The mistake happens when the die shifts just slightly between strikes, creating that eerie, doubled appearance. And yes, it can be incredibly subtle. Which is why most people never catch it, but that's not all. Roughly 2 minutes in, and you're probably wondering, are there more? Oh yes. Ever heard of a cut error? That's when a piece of the die breaks off during the minting process, causing a raised blob, usually on the rim or close to the lettering. If you see a strange, raised bump near the word Liberty or around In God We Trust, it might be a cut. And just one of these mistakes sold for $4,600 in a 2022 auction. Still not convinced this coin could be hiding treasure? Well, here's another twist: some 1941 pennies were struck on the wrong metal planchet. That means instead of copper, they were accidentally made using a foreign coin blank. These rare off-metal errors weigh slightly less or feel different in hand. One of these off-metal 1941 wheat pennies sold for a staggering $21,000, all because a collector noticed it felt too light. Let that sink in. Just feeling different was enough to raise suspicion, and that suspicion turned into a 5-figure payday. Now here's a myth you might have heard: all 1941 wheat pennies with no mint mark are common. False. While yes, millions were minted in Philadelphia, only a few thousand are known to have die cracks running through Lincoln's shoulder, sometimes referred to as the lightning shoulder variety. These cracks form tiny raised lines that almost look like scars on the coin's surface. And they can be worth anywhere from $350 to $2,200, depending on severity. Let's dig even deeper. Look closely at the word 1 cent on the reverse. If you see any doubling, especially on the E or N, you might have found a double die reverse. It's less common than the obverse doubling but still highly valuable. One recently fetched $3,750 at a heritage auction because of clear doubling on the wheat stalks and lettering. And don't forget, die chips. These are tiny metal bumps that form in places like Lincoln's eye or along the edges of letters when the die begins to wear. They may look like imperfections, but to a trained collector, they scream opportunity. Even a small die chip in the right location can boost the value of a 1941 penny to $480 or more. Are you starting to see why checking these coins matters? Every few years, a story emerges of someone who thought they had just a penny, until an expert spotted a nearly invisible flaw. Like the Ohio man who sold a 1941 no-mint mark penny for $11,000, all because of a rare rotated die strike, where the front and back weren't aligned properly. An error most people overlook, but it changed his life. Here's what you need to do now: grab a magnifying glass. Check the date. Inspect Lincoln's face, his shoulder, the edges of every letter. Look for doubling, cracks, chips, and anything that doesn't seem perfect. Compare your coin's weight if you can. And don't assume anything is worthless until you've double-checked, because let's be honest, how many times have you tossed a coin into a jar without a second thought? What if one of those coins was your hidden treasure? What if you've already held a coin worth $99,500, and never even knew it? This isn't about hype. It's about awareness. Every 1941 penny with no mint mark has a story, but only a few are written in rare errors, hidden flaws, and historic mistakes that slipped past the US Mint's eyes. Will you be the one who finds it, or the one who lets it slip away forever? Check your coins today, because tomorrow might be too late. Have you ever thrown away a fortune, and never even knew it? That's exactly what thousands of Americans may have done with the 1942 copper wheat penny with the D mint mark. It looks like just another old penny, but one microscopic detail can be worth nearly $1 million. If you're not checking closely, you could be losing $992,000 without ever realizing it. Most people think 1942 pennies aren't special. And for the regular ones, they're right. They're made of bronze, minted in large numbers, and today, most are worth just a few cents. But the 1942 D copper wheat penny hides secrets, and if you miss the signs, you could be spending a fortune without even knowing it. Let's start with the first trap, the 1942 D double die obverse. Some pennies from this year have a strong doubling on the date and the word liberty. At a glance, it's easy to miss. But tilt it under a light, and you'll see it. The numbers 1-9-4-2 look slightly shadowed, as if printed twice. That small mistake. It's no ordinary flaw. One verified example sold for over $45,000 at auction. That's one coin, from one drawer, that could change your life. Still holding onto your seat? Good, because the story gets even stranger. There's a rare variety that almost no one believes exists, but it does. In 1942, the U.S. Mint was preparing for wartime production. That meant transitioning away from copper, eventually leading to the famous 1943 steel pennies. But here's the twist: a few experimental copper planchets from 1943 were struck early, using 1942 dies, creating a transitional error. These ultra-rare coins have a slight weight difference, a deeper copper hue, and most importantly, they don't belong to 1942 or 1943. One of these oddities, confirmed with metal composition tests, reportedly sold $4.85000. But it gets even more thrilling. There's also the D over S mint mark error, a classic case of one mint mark punched over another. In this bizarre 1942 D/S penny, the Denver Mint accidentally stamped over an S from San Francisco. You need a magnifying glass to catch it, but once you know what to look for, you'll never forget it. The D will look thicker, almost awkward. And under zoom, a faint curve from the S peeks out like a ghost from history. One coin with this error went for $27,500, just because someone noticed the odd shape of the letter D. And just when you think you've seen it all, let's talk about die cracks. On 1942 D pennies, cracks often form near Lincoln's shoulder or around the rim. While common ones are worth little, there's a documented crack that forms a crown on Lincoln's head. Collectors call it the crowned Lincoln error. One version with perfect crack lines sold for $5,800 on a collector's site. Why? Because it looks like art, and in the world of rare coins, visual drama means value. 2 more minutes in, and still curious, here's another mind-blowing detail: some 1942 D pennies were struck off-center, missing part of the design. If the date is still visible and the strike is about 15 to 30% off-center, collectors will line up to bid. One such coin. $3,200 at a live auction in Texas. And that's for a coin with a mistake. And let's not forget the over-polished die error, where parts of Lincoln's jacket or beard vanish entirely because the mint workers overcleaned the die. These coins often look off, like Lincoln is missing detail or looks younger than usual. One such coin was graded and listed for $1,100, just because a tiny detail disappeared. Now pause. Think about your childhood piggy bank. That old jar in your garage. The coins you use for vending machines or throw in donation boxes. You may have spent one of these without realizing it. You may already own one. The difference between a worthless penny and a six-figure windfall is just this: knowledge. So next time you pick up a 1942 D wheat penny, don't toss it. Don't ignore it. Inspect it. Tilt it under light. Check the date. Study the mint mark. Look for shadows, cracks, missing pieces. Because somewhere out there, sitting in a drawer or a box of junk coins, is a penny that could make you rich. This is your moment. Don't let $1 million mistake pass through your hands. Check your change. Recheck your collection. You could be just one coin away from everything. There's a small detail on one ordinary-looking coin that could mean the difference between 1 cent and $970,000. It's so subtle, most people never notice it. But if you've got a 1946 wheat penny without a mint mark, this tiny oversight could be silently draining your pocket of a fortune. This isn't just another copper penny story. This is about one of the most misjudged coins in American numismatic history, a coin struck right after the end of World War II, during a time when the U.S. Mint was overwhelmed, and errors slipped through in shocking numbers. But here's the catch: the 1946 no-mintmark wheat penny looks completely normal at first glance. People spend them, sell them in bulk, even toss them in jars, not realizing that one microscopic detail can make all the difference. Let me ask you, have you ever looked at the 6 in the date? Really looked? Because some 1946 pennies contain a distorted or double-punched 6, where a secondary shadow curves off the number. It's called a double die obverse, and in 2019, one of these error coins sold for over $12,000, and that wasn't even the cleanest example. Now here's where things get intense. Some rare 1946 wheat pennies have a misaligned die strike, meaning the coin was hit off-center, creating a dramatic, almost warped look. One example, found in a mixed roll, was later graded and auctioned for $7,400. And guess where it was found? In a penny jar, in a garage, during a move. But the most legendary version? It's one you've likely never seen, a 1946 transitional planchet error, where the coin was struck on a leftover wartime steel planchet instead of copper. Only one has ever been confirmed. It looked silvery, weighed differently, and sold for nearly $970,000 at auction. A penny. Almost $1 million. All because it was minted using the wrong metal. But even more haunting, some experts believe more of these steel-struck 1946 coins might still be out there. Unrecognized. Sitting in collections. Hiding in pocket change. Could you be holding one right now? Now, let's zoom in on another mistake, the die crack. It looks like a tiny lightning bolt, often appearing from Lincoln's forehead to the edge of the coin, or slicing through the wheat stalks on the back. Some collectors call these cut errors, when a piece of the die breaks off completely, causing raised blobs or lines. They can add hundreds or even thousands in value, depending on how dramatic they are. One with a bold vertical die crack on Lincoln's bust sold for $2,100, and was discovered in a $1 coin roll from a bank. What makes this even more surprising is how common these errors seem. But the tragedy is, most people just don't know what to look for. They see a penny from 1946, they see it has no mint mark, and they assume it's worth a few cents at best. But that missing mint mark actually confirms it was struck in Philadelphia, where most of these die and strike errors occurred. So how can you tell if your 1946 penny is special? First, grab a magnifying glass or use your phone's camera zoom. Look closely at the date. If the 6 shows doubling, shadowing, or looks like it's been stamped twice, you could be looking at a valuable double die. Next, feel the coin's surface. Any raised, strange ridges or textures that don't match the rest of the design could be die cracks. And if the coin looks slightly off-center, where the rim is thicker on one side, that's a misaligned die strike, another highly prized error. Still with me? Because here's where myths can trap you. Some people think that if a penny is old, it must be valuable. That's not true. Most 1946 wheat pennies are common. But some are hiding rare, explosive errors that collectors are desperate to find. And they'll pay thousands, just to get their hands on them. Others believe that no mint mark means a fake. Wrong again. In 1946, Philadelphia didn't use mint marks at all. So no mint mark is authentic, and potentially valuable if the coin carries one of these hidden mistakes. Every 2 or 3 years, another high-grade error coin from 1946 appears and shocks the market. But think about this, How many more are never found, because someone didn't bother to look? The truth is, you could be sitting on a mini fortune without even realizing it. A tiny error that looks like nothing to the untrained eye might be your once-in-a-lifetime chance to change everything. So go. Grab your old jars. Dig into your penny rolls. Look at the date. Check for doubling. Search for cracks. Measure the weight. And whatever you do, don't spend another 1946 penny until you know what's hiding on its surface, because every time someone overlooks one of these, another dream slips away, uncashed. Don't let yours be the next. What if I told you that a simple copper penny from 1951, one without a mint mark, might be hiding in your home right now, and it could be worth tens of thousands of dollars? Most people overlook it. They see an old, worn coin and toss it aside. But here's the catch: one tiny mistake on this coin, just one nearly invisible flaw, could mean the difference between a single cent and nearly $35,000 at auction. This isn't just about collecting. It's about what you might already own without knowing it. A 1951 wheat penny with no mint mark might look common, but under the surface, it's a landmine of valuable errors, and most people have absolutely no idea. Let's start with one of the most surprising details. The 1951 penny was minted in Philadelphia if it has no mint mark. And while hundreds of millions were produced, only a few escaped with wild mint errors that turned them into lottery tickets for their owners. One collector spotted a double die reverse, where the wheat stalks on the back appear shadowed and slightly doubled. That penny, barely noticeable unless tilted in the light, sold for over $17,500. Now, pause. Think about that. A penny sitting in your change jar could pay for a family vacation, a home renovation, or even wipe out a credit card bill, just because of a misaligned press in a mint facility over 70 years ago. But that's not the only error. Every 2 minutes, people are waking up to the real value of die cracks, especially around Lincoln's hairline or along the rim of the coin. These fine, jagged breaks in the metal might look like scratches to the untrained eye. But they're not scratches. They're minting flaws. And collectors? They're obsessed with them. One such coin, with a die crack arching from the date to the shoulder, went for over $9,200 in a private sale. Still with me? Because this next part is what really separates the dreamers from the finders. There's a rare myth around the 1951 penny, a belief that none were struck on leftover silver planchets. But that's been shattered. In 2006, a 1951 penny was found struck on a foreign coin blank, giving it an odd hue and weight. The value? A staggering $28,750. And here's the best part: most of these coins weren't discovered by experts. They were found by regular people, checking jars, drawers, and inherited boxes of old coins. Everyday Americans, just like you. To spot these errors, you don't need fancy equipment. A basic magnifying glass can reveal doubling in the letters E pluribus unum on the back, or slight misalignments in the date. If the wheat stalks seem uneven or extra thick, or if the coin feels off-center, you might be staring at a four-figure mistake. There's one last error that sends shivers down collectors' spines: the off-center strike. Imagine the coin stamped just slightly off balance, so part of Lincoln's face is missing. These coins are rare and instantly recognizable. And while a minor off-center might fetch $50 to $100, some extreme versions have gone for over $12,000. Think of that for a moment. How many 1951 pennies have you handled in your life? 5? 10? 100? Now imagine if just one had a barely visible flaw that could change your life. But because you didn't know what to look for, you spent it. Or tossed it in a donation jar. Or worse, gave it away. This is your wake-up call. Don't let another day go by without checking your coins. Especially the ones that seem ordinary. Especially the 1951 no-mint mark wheat penny. The hidden fortune could be hiding in plain sight, and it's waiting for someone who simply knows where to look. Start with your drawers. Check your jars. Open the old albums in your attic. Because you're not just looking for coins, you're looking for a miracle. This isn't just a coin story. It's a warning. Because buried in ordinary change, in dusty drawers and forgotten jars, lies the 1958 copper wheat penny with a D mint mark, and if you don't know what to look for, you could miss a coin worth over $918,000. Most Americans have never heard the full truth about the 1958 D wheat penny. And that's the problem. It's one of those coins that pretends to be common. It looks like every other penny. But one tiny mistake, one microscopic error in its design, changed everything. In 1958, the Denver Mint produced tens of millions of wheat pennies, over 800 million, in fact. But among those, a handful had a hidden secret. A rare double die error so powerful, it launched this coin into collector legend. Most people never see it because they're not looking closely enough. The doubling doesn't scream, it whispers. But once you learn to spot it, you'll never forget it. The most valuable 1958 penny ever sold was a double die obverse, where the words "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" show clear, shadow-like doubling. It's not a blur. It's a bold, dramatic separation in the letters. It was so well struck, so rare, that it sold for $918,750 at auction, and guess what? Only 3 of these are confirmed to exist. Now imagine finding one in your pocket change, but here's the twist, the 1958 D mint mark version isn't supposed to have this doubling at all. Which means if you find one with even the faintest signs of doubled lettering, you're holding a coin that defies mint history, and could rewrite your future. Hold on. There's more. Some 1958 D pennies have been found with die cracks, tiny lightning bolt-like fractures running across the coin, especially around Lincoln's head or the wheat stalks on the reverse. On most coins, they're just minor. But on the 1958 D, certain cracks formed cuds, raised blobs where the metal filled a broken part of the die. One such coin sold for $2,500, even with heavy wear. Still think a penny is just a penny. Let's talk about RPMs, repunched mint marks. The Denver Mint was notorious for inconsistencies back then. If you see a D mint mark that looks like it was stamped twice, slightly offset or shadowed, that's an RPM. Some 1958 D RPM pennies have sold for over $850, just because collectors crave these imperfections, and here's where things get strange. A few sharp-eyed collectors have uncovered off-center strikes in 1958 D pennies, where the design is literally shifted, exposing blank copper on the side. The more off-center it is without losing date visibility, the more valuable it becomes. One such example fetched $1,750 at auction, but what if your coin has more than one error? That's where things explode. A 1958 D wheat penny with both an RPM and a die crack recently stunned collectors when it sold for over $5,200. That's the power of combined rarity. And many of these are still out there, ungraded, unnoticed, unclaimed. So how do you spot these secrets? Start with the front of the coin, the obverse. Use a 10x magnifying glass and study the letters in Liberty, In God We Trust, and especially the date. Look for separation, shadows, or strange thickness. Then check the D mint mark. If it looks weird, like there's a ghost of another D behind it, you may be staring at a repunched mark. Flip the coin. Look at the wheat stalks. Are they sharp? Broken? Do you see tiny raised lines that look like cracks? That could be a die break. If there's a large blob connecting the rim to the wheat stalk, that's a cud, and that's rare. Now here's a critical detail collectors forget. Even common-looking 1958 D pennies, if kept in uncirculated condition, can be worth over $65 to $120. Just for being shiny and well-preserved. So don't dismiss a coin just because it doesn't scream rare. The condition is a form of value, but here's the scariest part: every day, people spend these pennies without knowing. They don't check. They don't care. They dump them into coin jars or Coinstar machines. And the moment they do, that rare error, that 5-figure mistake, is lost forever. You might be thinking, what are the odds I have one? But odds don't matter. Effort does. Because all it takes is one glance. One quiet moment with a magnifying glass. One penny, With one hidden error, and everything changes. So before you spend another penny, check your jars, your drawers, your car cup holders. Because the 1958 wheat penny isn't just history, it's a time bomb of hidden value, waiting for someone smart enough to look. That someone could be you. Don't wait. Don't assume. Pick up that penny, and look again.